All right, everyone. So today I have a special guest who actually was with me when I first got started in the industry as an agent working at the first brokerage. And the one thing I love about Dan is he brings in a perspective that's not in the industry, which for some reason I think our industry has a huge issue with looking outside. Like everyone just wants to stay inside the industry, and we don't realize that there's a lot of other businesses and experience that I think brings a perspective that we need. I mean, I think you would agree real estate's an old industry. So it's one of those fields where, you know, until you hit a certain level, everyone below, like halfway and below, doesn't realize that, hey, there's other ways to do this and to focus on maybe better financial support and like the way you go about things. But why don't you give a spiel about your backstory and how you came all the way through? Because you weren't even an agent when you got in. You just kind of fell into it.
Well, still not an agent. That's not to judge anyone who is an agent. That just hasn't been a part of my life. But yeah, first of all, Cameron, man, thank you so much for having me on today. It's good to see you. I'm glad that in the preamble to all this that I got to see one of your children. But hopefully, Martha, if you watch these, hello to you as well. Cameron's got a great family out there doing great things, just like he did when he was out here in San Diego. But yeah, so my background is as storied as they come when it comes to finding your way into real estate. But started my career actually thinking I was going to be a pediatrician. Got a phone call for a desperate need for someone to like temporarily fill a role out of all places, Sony PlayStation. And I'm like, man, they want to pay me to travel and play video games. My sister worked for them. I call her back. I'm like, yeah, okay. I'm like, I think I'm in for this. I'll delay med school, whatever I got to do. So 2 years into doing that, after deciding med school wasn't even going to be my path anymore at that point, we decided to start a headphone company. And I met a gentleman that was launching this business and liked the man, but then also loved the concept of the business. So we eventually grew this teeny tiny little startup with 3 of us sitting around a table into the fastest and largest selling sport headphone in the United States and 46 other countries across the United States or across the world. That turned into an acquisition. We were purchased by Harman, who does like Harman Kardon, JBL, and eventually
I still have this. Yeah.
There we go. Let's go.
Yeah. Now those listening, I think they're going to recognize those brands for sure.
Yeah, actually that's part of Samsung. So if you're an Android user, one, I'm sorry, but no, I'm just kidding. But 2, that's kind of where the legacy of that went. So that brought me out here to San Diego. Got to join a private equity firm and running some businesses out here, specifically a sports equipment company called Skills, and then a chair company called Sportbrella, and then a little miniature basketball hoop that I still have over here called Pro Mini Hoop. If you've ever dunked on like the little spring rim hoop, that was us.
I think anyone
did that for a couple of years.
Yeah, for sure. Growing.
Yeah, 100%.
So
I dunked on it right before we started. I dunked on one. But that led me to then take a sabbatical. I spent some time just traveling with my family. And through that season, met my business partner, Mike. And the vision that he had in running the real estate team that he has out here in San Diego, he'd been running it for many years, anything from 40 to 80 million in production on an annual basis. But what he had was a vision for something much bigger. And I didn't really want to partner in a local San Diego real estate company. Just, it felt like there wasn't enough impact in that. Now, my thoughts have kind of changed where I just love the intimacy and how deep you can go with individuals through it. But we wanted to do something much bigger. So we launched Century Residential, the nation's first ever nationwide military-focused residential real estate brokerage. Grew the company to be in 75 markets in 25 states across the United States. And then just recently merged that into a brokerage called Real, where we officially launched the military division there, where I get to continue to do the things that I love, which is primarily what we're doing right here, training, education, and just sewing into people.
It's awesome. I love it. I don't care if you mentioned it there, but I know now you're also into lending as well. Now is what you
it's funny that you mentioned that because I forget that myself, apparently.
I know. I mean, honestly, everything else is so big. It's like, oh yeah, by the way.
Why exactly are you on this call? During the years with Century, we always had lending division, lending partnership. that was our way of just making sure that we could have as unanimous and as seamless of a service that we could offer to our clients. Because obviously, if you're in real estate or you're in lending, you know that the person that's on the other side of the table working with you can either make or break your transaction. So we liked to stack the deck with quality professionals. When we merged over to Real, I actually decided to go and get my NMLS myself to even go deeper on what we were doing on the lending side. And now that's something that I get to do with the select clients that I dive into it with.
Awesome. Are you looking to grow that individually, or is it for you, it's like just the next venture of learning?
I love it, to be completely honest. There's some things that just really light me up, and doing lending is probably the perfect little combination of them, because it's relationship, and I'm very specific about that one. Like I'd be quick to turn away a client that I don't feel like I'm going to have like a solid relationship with, because it's something I'm doing because I'm choosing to do it. Second thing is coaching and education. Like almost everybody that I talk to when we have that first conversation, there's things that I'm teaching them, whether it's about, personal finance, maybe it's about wealth management, maybe it's walking them through what home ownership looks like in the first time. Maybe it's explaining to them the power of their VA benefit. But in every one of those calls, there's always some coaching and training element that I'm doing. And with many of them, that might be all I do. And that honestly, it fills my heart. You feel good. And then the third thing, anybody who's spent any time around me in any one of my businesses knows that for whatever reason, I am obsessed with spreadsheets. And I just love running the numbers. I love, building macros, and it became something I learned to do and loved to do. So that's another part of why I'm just enjoying doing the lending side of things.
Well, you've, obviously from the outside perspective, you've worked with a lot of agents, myself included, when I first got licensed. And then obviously you see a lot of lenders. What do you think the biggest difference is between the two? Because I know I have some people that have reached out before when I was doing more interviews and now getting back into it, and they can't decide to go which direction. What's your outside opinion between the type of person to be a better agent and where lending fits? Because obviously a lot of people are maybe shied away, and we've lost a lot of professionals from both sides in this current market. But what's your outside perspective of those?
Man, there's so much wrapped up in that. One, great question. Two, the agents leaving and everything, that's like its own thing. Maybe we come back and visit that.
Yeah, for sure.
What we're doing. But so for lending versus real estate, it's funny because I've had so many conversations with lenders that were formerly realtors that had great reasons that they left real estate and became a lender, and vice versa, had many conversations with real estate agents who ended up becoming lenders. Now, the main reason, to be very transparent, like the main reasons that I hear and that I kind of logically think makes sense as well, is the lenders that decide to go into real estate, they oftentimes do it because they're looking at the commission that a real estate agent is earning on the same transaction, where they may be making a third of what the real estate agent is making. And they're going, man, this guy seems like he's doing less work than me and he's making 3 times as much. Often that's why they end up moving over. Now, conversely, on the other side, the lenders that were formerly real estate agents, they're going, dude, I am Johnny on the spot. I got to be there at all times, physically in a property showing it. Then I've got to be physically in the property for inspections. Then I got to be physically in there for appraisal, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I am landlocked. I can't travel. I'm on the call 24 hours a day. I'm going to get into lending because I can do that from anywhere. And I am not bound by the hours that I commit to doing this for all these showings and other activities. So now I get time freedom where I may be able to serve 6 times as many clients as what I was doing if I was actually just doing real estate. So I think both sides have some validity to them. So I think if people are looking for a more transient lifestyle, and the ability to just be freer, traveling around, doing different things. Maybe they're just spending more time with their kids, whatever that may look like. Lending can lend itself well to that. And then real estate, I feel like the people who do exceptionally well in real estate, one, legitimately love real estate. They fall asleep thinking about houses through the night. They dream about houses, and then they wake up the next day and they're like, oh man, I can't wait to like go and like do some of that. I think there's a core part of like some of the best agents that I know that's really part of who they are. Second thing they love
on with the house, it's like each house itself to a point.
Absolutely. I think another thing that makes for a good agent is they love people. And lenders, as a loan officer, you have to do that as well because you're going to be in relationship, but you're not often belly to belly. I'd say
you think you're 80%. I think numbers people tend to be more direct, maybe not personable, but do you think they tend to be like more like they're numbers people to a point? To an extent,
they have to be sometimes, but the reality is that in an origination role, more of like what it is actually on the relationship side, because most mortgage companies, when it comes to the actual the number side of it, like you'll have support in processing, you'll have support in setup, so you have other people who are likely going to be involved in making sure that all the numbers are correct. That's not true everywhere, so some loan officers are really soup to nuts doing everything, and that kind of takes me to my third point on which one is like a way to go. The reality is, if you are going to ultimately grow a large business and be successful in either one of them, the same personalities can succeed very well in either one, because in both of those circumstances, you can build teams. You can build your real estate life as a real estate business and not just try and be the one-stop shop where you're doing everything. Instead, outsourcing things like your transaction coordination, having showing agents that can help you on being the physical presence that needs to be there, either starting or joining a team so you have other redundancies in place so that you have someone who can back you up when you do want to take a vacation. So, and the same things apply over on the loan officer side, where you have assistants that are helping you with follow-up for taking a lead and turning it into someone that you're going to be able to serve. You also have processors who are going to help you with the file setup and actually getting the blocking and tackling administrative part of it done, so you can focus on the client relationship, the high level strategy, and making sure that you're doing right with all the paperwork being done correctly, but without having to be the one that may be typing the numbers, into loan software.
So I'm sure you've seen, as I think we all have you seen the people that double dip in both? And not saying that you can't have both. So my question isn't like, should they have both? Because obviously we all know you can just refer out deals as an agent. You're not really mentally dealing with that stuff. Yep. You just can't physically do both in a transaction in most states. I'm sure there's some states out there that get even weirder, but we'll talk about the big ones like Texas, Florida, California, where you are, where I'm also licensed still. We know that you can do both. You just can't use both in one transaction. You have to pick one.
You think you can. You can do both on the same transaction. There's only some loan types that won't allow for that.
Okay. So my next follow-up question is, obviously with even like your past business experience, do you think holding both and trying to still work both, do you think that pulls away from getting like really good at one when you really, maybe you can have both, but the reality is what do you think about that, about having both or just being focused on one or the other?
Yeah, realtors, and I'll say maybe lenders as well, but realtors for sure love the shotgun approach. And they play that out in many different parts of their career. They may play it out as actually choosing to do lending and real estate at the same time. More often than not, though, it happens in their marketing, where they have no idea what to do. When they do it, they have no idea what is working. And then when something is possibly working, they just end up doing everything. So they're firing down YouTube. They're paying for ads with Zillow. They're paying for Facebook ads. They're doing all their Sphere stuff. They're just dividing themselves and their time up in so many different areas without ever really understanding what is coming back to them and working. And that's the shiny object nature of the entrepreneurial brain that often comes along with many real estate agents. So that can be a blessing and a curse to them. My perspective on anything in business, when you're really trying to be successful, is focus is power. Your greatest growth, your greatest strength, your greatest opportunity is going to come from when you burn the boats and you actually decide that you're going to go deep into something else. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't find ways to, participate and do things in the other industry, but to be a practitioner in both, you're going to be only so good in one and only so good in the other, as opposed to being excellent in either one of them. If you're not really giving yourself fully to either of them. And the reality is, if you look at agents that do both, and if you look at lenders that do both, it plays out for them that way. And there's something to be said. If you've got the bandwidth where you can handle kind of balancing both of those, what I've seen happen from top agents, there's a young man that I know, he's got, I think he's done 20, 30 million on the real estate side over the course of the last 2 years. It's a decent producer. But this year, just in the 1 year alone, he's done 30 million in lending, and his real estate business is kind of drying up. So it just naturally kind of plays out where now he's going, yeah, maybe I don't spend as much time on the real estate side of things because my lending business is actually really going strong. So he can take referrals and be able to, do referrals in that way and still have an income that comes from the real estate. But as a practitioner, it's kind of fading itself now for him and revealing itself that he probably isn't going to spend as much time, working on that side of the business anymore.
That brings up a good question that just popped in my head. So obviously in this tight market, I'm sure a lot of agents and lenders are like they look at it and they go, maybe I chose the wrong career. And let's assume this agent, like they're 3 to 5 years. Like, it's not like they're year one, like, it didn't work out the first year. I guess I'm not great.
Yeah.
Let's assume they've been in the business for a while, 3 to 5 years. I know I've had conversations with people who have even left or what, we all see it right now. At what point do you think in someone's career, and let's assume they're under 40, maybe 30. Let's assume they're younger, so they still are probably newer in their career compared to most. At what point do you think it makes sense for them to maybe try something else, or they just need to double down on what they're doing?
Yeah, at every point. A methodology and a strategy that every one of us should be taking at all times, and this is in all things in our life, is like, if we're not measuring and if we're not analyzing things, then we're missing out on the best that life has to offer us. So my recommendation to anybody that's in the industry right now is like, you should be looking at your business, and don't do it with despair. Mm-hmm. Don't do it with fear. Don't do it with worry. Like, all of that is nonsense and it'll cloud your judgment, but do it pragmatically. And you have to make the decision, do I pivot or do I persevere? And it really is that simple at all times. Do I pivot in what I'm doing or do I persevere? And you can make that micro, and you can make that about a Zillow spend. Look at your results, analyze them, and don't just look at them as today. Look at them on the long term and say, over the course of time, what is this turning into with the referrals that came from that, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. But do I pivot and change and stop doing this, or do I persevere and continue doing this? If you're not asking yourselves those questions at that micro level, then your business isn't going to be able to thrive. But then roll that up higher and higher until you get to the macro level of the big life decision of, do I change careers? You should be using the data from all those little micro analyses of pivot or persevere to answer the question of, like, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? And when it comes to that, there's a black and white portion of that is your P&L. If you don't have a P&L, get a freaking P&L immediately and help yourself understand, like, are you running your business like a business? Are you making money, or are you just out there pissing in the wind?
I laugh. This had a conversation a couple months ago, and they were like, what's that? And I'm like, don't tell me what's that. Now, to be fair, I didn't know about that until I worked with you. So I'm not gonna say anything about that. I was that guy. And thankfully I was brand new, so it was okay. But
no one teaches us this stuff. Like, unless you went to business school, unfortunately, our secondary education system does nothing to help us understand even our own personal finances and our personal P&L. So then how can you apply that into a business if you've never even learned or seen or even know, like, what simple tools you can use to be able to do that in the first place? So one is the black and white. Are you making money? Is it actually a business that is successful? And then the second is like the subjective one, which is look at your heart and figure out, like, am I actually enjoying doing this? Like, this isn't about being a hedonist. This isn't about just pursuing pleasure for the sake of pleasure and only doing the things that you actually enjoy. Like, that's not going to get you anywhere in life. Like, your growth is going to come when you're lacking in comfort in almost all circumstances, when you are having to push, like the sign that's behind Cameron right there. But you do have to take that into consideration. It should be equally weighted for you when you're deciding, like, am I going to continue doing this or not? If you wake up every day and your day starts with being in a bad mood because you have to do real estate or because you have to go and, like, talk to clients and be on the lending side, then even whether your P&L might be making you a bunch of money. And if that's the case, you probably still need to move out of the industry. There's ways that you can still capture income from the business that you have built on the real estate side so that you're not foregoing that, but you can make it something that's much more passive, still allowing you to go and do your highest and your best so that you wake up instead fired up and excited about what you're doing instead of, ruining the day that you have to actually do another transaction, another client, another deal.
That brings up a good point. Because I know some people are going to feel that way, but maybe they're just going through a rough period in business, which happens no matter what you do. I know I've experienced that, still being very new into this, and I'm sure you've experienced over your way more years of experience. Is there like a process that someone can actually sit down? Because the emotional side, I know you're not that old, but you know what I mean. It's longer than I have. I'm still green in this, but so obviously a lot of person could look at this and go, oh, I just, things have been rough this quarter, and I maybe I shouldn't be doing this. My heart tells me, is there a process to actually sit down? Because let's say they are profitable. Maybe not crazy. Yeah. Maybe it is more, but they're like, I just feel like it's been like this, it last year. I just feel like this isn't it. Is there a process that you think someone can go through to kind of figure that out on the, let's say the lifestyle side, but not I'm not getting fast cars, but you know what I mean? Let's say they have family and stuff like that.
Yeah. So I'll start actually on the black and white side of it. Yeah. One thing that have to be able to do in real estate that helps the lifestyle side and then the emotional side of it is you cannot look at your P&L. I mean, you should look at your month in a P&L. You should look at your P&L in a month tight compartment. However, if you get too focused on the month, then you're going to miss out on what actually happens in our industry. We have an industry that is seasonal, even in a good market. Right. So if you're looking at your January and February P&L and freaking out and going, I'm shutting it down, I got to move on, it's probably because you're spending in ways that you shouldn't be spending for the entire year. Because if I'm going to make, let's say $100,000 in real estate this year, that's actually how it's going to play out over the year. Well, there may be 3 months where I make $0 and it's actually a negative output. That doesn't mean that I stop doing it. It means that I make sure that in the months when I am making, that I'm putting that money away, that I'm keeping that money aside. I'm not taking it as a distribution. I'm not going out and buying a new, fancy car and taking on more debt and more liability for myself. Instead, I'm actually going to plan for that. So that long term, when the next month comes and I have a wellspring of this is great. That's just part of the way that you run the business. And even I had to learn that coming into this industry where I would think, oh man, the sky is falling. Everything is over. We've got this much of a loss, and you would just emotionally grapple and just deal and wrestle with that, only to then have, 2 months later, that loss be, 5x of be 5x returned in income. And you go, okay, cool. I get it now. And for me, emotionally, that was difficult because every business, that I had started that I run, we paid ourselves salaries. And granted, maybe it was $30,000 at the very beginning of one of those companies, but there was at least money that I knew that I was going to take every single month. And then, eventually it goes up, et cetera. But in real estate, it doesn't really necessarily work like that unless you are intentionally setting your business up to run like a normal business would, where you're holding back months of reserves. And on average, right now on our business, we have 3 months of reserves, even just for the local business. Cause it's hey, we could have a crappy market that comes through. We need to be able to make sure that we've got a quarter worth of runway, that if there wasn't a single deal that came through, doesn't matter. Everybody's still getting paid. The team's got jobs, et cetera, et cetera. And that to me is kind of
the call. You said it's the game is to how, especially I guess as the individual agents, how can I spend as little as possible?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially in a season like this.
The Profit First.
I've not heard.
All right. Well, the concept, it's a fun book. It's Mike Malkowicz wrote the book. But the general concept is let's say you have $100 that come in, where you're separating it into percentages. They have one that's specific for real estate agents and a bunch of other industries, but the concept is you train yourself as a small business, especially when you don't know how your business operates. It's you only take a percentage. You always pay yourself a little bit, but you maybe start higher in the beginning, 40% for expenses. I'm just assuming right off the bat, and maybe you have 5% or 15, 25% for taxes, or and this is obviously real estate's a little bit different. You can vary. But that's a general concept. Do you think that's good for someone to practice maybe just on the general side without knowing too much about it? But
without reading the book, without ever reading that book, all they're doing is just teaching what any person who runs a P&L and has that responsibility to a company is doing on a daily basis. So in a healthy company, if I asked anyone who was watching this right now, if I said to you, what percentage of your income do you spend on marketing? What percentage of your income do you spend on operations? What percentage of your income do you spend on payroll? They should be able to give me the exact percentages based on an annual basis, because yes, your income is going to ebb and flow. It's going to go up and it's going to go down, but healthy businesses are based on those percentages. And every industry is different. We're in a service industry with these businesses where you have a lot more margin, which is the profit between your expenses and your income. You have a lot more margin to work with. And that's what causes the expenses go up and up and up, because you just look at it and go, oh man, there's all this money that I'm not having to, I own consumer packaged good companies. With those, it's like, exactly what your initial gross margin is. You know that when I buy this product, the landing cost here is X. And when it's all said and done, like that cannot be more than, 20% of my total income. Because if it is, I'm never going to be able to be profitable. And you start to learn those things and you start to understand and identify what those percentages are that will allow you to be profitable. But I see very few people doing that in real estate. And even with, my best friend and business partner, like we'll have that conversation because he is such a visionary and has that mentality that I shared before about the squirrel and like shotgun. Like, let's just do all things at all times and in all places. That becomes P&L creep, where all of a sudden it's just going up and up and up, that we have to reel it back in by saying, hey, look, what is a healthy percentage for us to be spending on marketing? Let's choose that percentage. Let's look at it every 3 months, every 6 months at what income has done over that trailing time, forecast for the future, and then choose what that spend is going to be and adjust what marketing we're going to do based on that, so that we don't put ourselves into a position where we're outspending and actually, costing ourselves the business.
I love it. Let's say agents are a little tight, but they know they need to start tracking their stuff better. What's like 3 tips you could give someone who maybe is like, you know what? I have not done any of this. What's 3 quick tips you think you can give someone maybe just to start the practice? Like whether it's maybe how often check the P&L or some software advice for like, hey, use this to start tracking things.
Yeah. So at minimum, build a spreadsheet. It can be that simple where you've got what the item is, whether it was expense, whether it was income, and put a date on it so you can look at it on a weekly or a monthly basis. If you want to spend $0, just start doing that. Tip, keep your receipts too and put them in, Google Drive or whatever cloud storage you're using. That's baseline. Anybody can do that, and it literally will cost you nothing.
And now, you recommend separating your finances too, right?
In what way?
Business and personal.
So absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Because that's because agents think of it all as being one, but it's really not. Like your business should be your business. You should have a P&L for that. And then you should also have your own personal, like standalone P&L. Like budget. If I took you through and show you my, it makes my wife's head spin sometimes, but I literally built an app for my family that goes through and has literally like every single dollar that gets spent, every single dollar that comes in on the personal side goes through that. And then I've got, I think, 8 QuickBooks accounts that we use. We have, a bunch of different properties. Every single one of them has their own P&L. So we're managing all that stuff. But when you manage to the penny like that, it's very, very easy to see the dollars get bigger and bigger and bigger, because you know where your money's going. It's no longer just going there by mistake. It's going there because you're telling it where you want it to go. And then you see where the gaps are. You see where the holes are. You see where you're bleeding money, where things aren't going well, and you pivot instead of just continuing on in what you would look at and say, look, that's just foolish. Why would I do that? So 1 would be spreadsheet. 2, QuickBooks, the most basic version. And there's FreshBooks. I'm not specific to QuickBooks. Get one, but FreshBooks is another one. But QuickBooks, I think
QuickBooks just connects to more things, but that's just
me.
They
have a self-employed version that's like $15 a month, and it does enough for you to be able to keep track of your business P&L and understand when you're successful, when you're not. Be able to see reports, be able to provide that to your tax guy so that he can actually help you save money on taxes, which is a big deal. So that'd be second thing. And then third thing, and our second tool you could use. Third thing, if you're making 60 grand or more, in real estate, you really should talk to a tax professional that can help you set up an S corporation and start paying yourself as an S corp. You'll save, I think it's 60 grand. 60 grand is about where it's break even because you do have to pay for a payroll service provider. But at 60 grand, I think you're already saving, it's like between $3,000 and $5,000 a year in taxes. And then it just goes up from there. I mean, there's people that save hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes just by setting themselves up as a S corporation.
Yeah, it makes sense. I have one. So, I mean, I don't know if you still use the same tax guy, but I was instructed to do that this year. So,
yeah, good for you.
Yeah. It's all an experience. It's official. It's on paper, just a piece of paper. The reality is it's a piece of paper. All the things you're saying still apply, even if it's not. But
it's people want to. One of the things that conversations like this can hopefully do is demystify things that seem scary. And most of the time, something that seems scary is just because it's unknown. And what we need to get past and what we need to start to realize is that the definition of adventure is doing something with an unknown outcome. So if you can get your mind and your heart to start to look past things that seem scary and instead kind of perceive those and look at those as an adventure and something new and different that you get to take on instead of something to hold off on, it can change everything for you.
I love that. No, that's great. Yeah. Anything, was that 3 or was that 2?
That was 3. I said the spreadsheet, the FreshBooks, and then the S corp.
I love it. No, those are great things. I think a lot of people will probably get started with their corporations too soon, especially if they've never been in the industry and have no money coming in.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a use.
I love it. And then I'm sure a lot of agents do their own taxes.
Way too late. I sorry to cut you off, Cameron. I had a conversation literally just yesterday with an agent that's on our team out here, making hundreds of thousands of dollars in real estate. And our finance person was cutting this agent a check for a recent transaction and was asking for approval to cut the check. I said, yep, cut the check. And then I reached out. I said, hey, by the way, we're paying you as your individual name. Is that right? Like what's your corporation name that we should be paying you as? And the agent was like, oh, I don't have one. I said, man, I go, well, oh my God. I just saved you $30,000. I just saved you $30,000, maybe $60,000, depending on how they end up doing it. I'm like, I just put that back in your pocket because we're going to talk this next week. We're going to get you set up with an S corp. I'm like, and all you got to do is buy a bottle of tequila.
Hey, sounds like a good deal to me. I'd spend that every day. I tell you, one of the hardest things I went through is being in Florida now is California, because they just have to be different. You have to be incorporated, not an LLC as an agent because you have a professional license. Florida's the opposite.
Yeah.
So now I realized I came to a hard point where I had to dial down California. I'm going to inactivate my license because they can't pay me on a W-9 as 2. I'm not a broker, so that also all plays into it. But yeah, so I'm going to have to move everything over to that LLC because it was a conflict.
That's now you know why Century Residential was Century Residential LLC and Century Residential Inc. We had to have 2 companies, 2 P&Ls. I mean, I'm not kidding. I think still to this day, I own a bunch of different businesses, but I think I've got at least 6 QuickBooks accounts still. And even like Century alone, it just complicated everything because we had to run 2 completely, completely different P&Ls that each had to have their own tax returns, all of that.
I'll be honest with you, even like depositing the checks when I was helping you guys with like admin stuff, I learned real quick I would never want to start an independent brokerage. I'm like, God bless you guys for that. I could not do it. Couldn't do it.
Hey,
and as a man, I'm okay to admit that. Couldn't do it.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's the reason we're at Real. There's things that we absolutely loved about Century. And like number 1, chief A1A was the people. We had just phenomenal people inside of that company. Yeah. And ultimately at some point you look at it and say, okay, so finance, HR, taxes, legal, operations. I mean, literally just the tens of thousands of dollars in MLS that you would pay every single month. And and on and on. I can just rattle off a list that's unending seemingly of all the different things that you take on when you're running a large national brokerage. And what I liked about, I mean, it's like, just like where you are at EXP, same thing with us at Real. It's like to get to go over to a place that provides just an amazing platform that allows you to focus on the things that we love, which was training, education, which was people, and then a reliable place to run a real estate business. That was eventually an easy decision because of how dedicated and committed they were to serving military members and veterans, which was what we existed for at Century.
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, I still remember you guys having to go through all the transactions, and it was just nuts. I mean, now the platforms that a lot of modern brokers are taking, like you said, Real and EXP, I've been a part of both, and I'm in EXP, is like my job, or in your position, is like I just care about, if agents join you, just care about them. That's all your job is. And then your transactions is to understand my local contracts that I need to, but to a point, like I know it's getting double checked on the back end. I just need to keep throwing them into contract, caring about the client, caring about my agents. And like, that's, it's, the model works. And not to mention like stock benefits and all that kind of stuff that can help agents being self-employed.
Exactly.
I know we're at 4. I'm not sure how much time you have left. If you want to leave some parting words of wisdom to agents maybe that are, I think a big thing is just maybe tracking their stuff, or just any words of wisdom you got to give them. Yeah.
I'll go complete opposite direction and say, keep the main thing the main thing.
Yep.
Things are probably tougher for many of you right now than they have been. That can create a lot of stress, a lot of worry, doubt, fear, anxiety, financial realities of having to let go of things that maybe you worked very, very hard to be able to achieve. Keep the main thing the main thing. You are not the things that you possess. In fact, more often than not, those things will possess you. Instead, focus on loving on every single person you get to encounter, and start that with your spouse. Continue that with your kids. And don't let what's going on in your career, whether good or bad, change anything about the things that are actually important in life. Because we chose this path, we chose this career. It can lead to immense and exorbitant wealth, which can be used poorly or used well. It can also lead to just broken backs and financial destruction, which even that can be used well or used poorly. There's a good outcome in every situation. You just got to be willing to actually go and find it.
I love it. And then do you have a specific contact info you want me to leave in the description of this before we depart, in case someone needs you for lending?
Yeah, totally. Email, I can text this to you or send this to you as well, but Dan@mythl.com, mythl, which is for Trident Home Loans. You can ping me on that, and you can also call me 314-757-0477.
I love it. Who knows? Maybe we'll get some business for this one day if this actually takes off.
Hey, make some new friends. That'd be all good.
Hey, new friends are always good. As long as they're good people, can't have enough of them. There's enough evil in the world, right? Got to find good stuff. Well, Dan, it's been a pleasure. I really appreciate you coming on. I think it was good insight for those who are going through this trying time that I think no one really talks about. Everyone talks about they just need more business, but I think it's all those other things and deciding what's right for them. So I appreciate you. And tell everyone, see you next time.